Just give yourself a few moments to settle in. And the way we do that in Tai Chi is always going to be through an awareness of posture. So there's a double bonus here, if you like. We both get that effect of settling and calming in mind and body, but also we get to improve our posture because they act and become aware of your posture helps, but also we learn what adjustments to make. So your feet, as in the standing, are hip width apart. So you've got these parallel lines going through your body. Weight a little bit forwards, about 30%, about a third of your weight in your feet. And just trying to get a sense of your feet sinking into the floor a little bit. And hips sinking into the chair. And as you do that, just notice sometimes it's an automatic response, especially when you've been doing things like Tai Chi for a while. Hips sink, and that seems to sort of draw your shoulders down. And that's helped, of course, by the fact that you come forward slightly in your head and the shoulders. You've angled forward to get that third of your weight in your feet. So the upper part of your body is well supported by the lower body. So it's not so far forwards that you feel as though you're being pulled forwards, just as though you're being pulled into your feet. Having this awareness of our skeleton, our inner structure, around which or over which the soft tissue seems to be sort of draped. There's a bit more kind of like structure to it than that. The big muscles of your back and shoulders, and your chest, and so on. Really able to release and to soften. Your head just resting on your shoulders. The breath just settling down. Rubbing your hands together. And tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. And your arm. The other side. Part of your chest. Light on your belly. And finally, your legs. Now, sit back. So one of the key things that we're always trying to cultivate in Tai Chi is this feeling of releasing, of allowing our body to settle in the way that I was describing, to allow the pull of gravity to work through our body, to allow our center of gravity to drop. All requires a releasing feeling, a letting go of the habitual resistance. Some of that is to do with what's happening in our mind. There are habits that we get into, And some of them have been quite useful. They've helped to keep us upright and so on and so forth. We just want to become aware of them. And in this posture, just try very carefully and gently, just tighten up in your hips and your shoulders a little bit. And then what you're going to do, you're going to sort of release suddenly and tighten and release. And in that feeling that we get inside the body of dropping, and this is not because we're coming out of the chair and dropping back into it. So externally, there's very little movement to be seen, but internally, you can feel a great deal of dropping down, and that's the sort of experience of releasing, of letting go, that we're looking to build into the upright postures, both seated and standing. You may notice a change in things like your breathing, for instance. So we begin to recognize certain reference points, certain landmarks that we can bring our attention back to, and that we can intend to take part in the body. So intention is this process of effectively, crudely put, it's your mind in one form or another giving an instruction to your body. It's not an attempt to manipulate the body, but rather an encouragement for our body to sort of cultivate that state, a reminder, if you like. So then come back up to the upright stance. Try that little exercise again, focusing mostly on your hips and lower back. Just tighten and release. Tighten. And when you tighten, just notice what happens in your belly, in your chest, in your back, in your shoulders. And then that nice feeling of releasing. Do that one more time. And so that's again an example of what we're looking for, either through the whole of our body or increasingly in different parts of our body. And our first response to any kind of tightening, any kind of stiffness, is always going to be to try that releasing feeling. If it doesn't work, we may then need to think about, well, are our shoulders in the right position? So maybe something to do with posture, or maybe use a stronger image, take into account again habits and the way that we sit and stand and move, and so on and so forth. So there's a process of investigation, shall we? And then just slowly turning your head. And then the shoulders. So as we start with the movements, one of the reasons we always start with very simple movements is because in the process of moving, we will almost certainly at times encounter resistance. And when we do, in the first instance, what we want to try and do is look for that same feeling of releasing. So feeling of releasing becomes an almost constant intention as we go through these exercises. It won't always work. There's other factors as well going forwards, but quite often we find, and we can get to a point where, say, as you're doing this, you meet a point of resistance, shoulders or your upper back, and it becomes quite instinctive to, as you feel those areas, to get a sense of releasing those areas. Hands down to your sides, rotating your arms. And then winding around. And then back the other way. Rest your hands. Tilting forwards, pelvis tilting forwards, your weight flowing towards your feet, legs, and then pressing down into the floor with your feet to push your shoulders back. At the same time as you push down with your feet, see if you can get that feeling of your hips dropping backwards into the chair. So between the two, head and shoulders and back coming upright in a nice smooth way. One more time, we're going straight forwards. And then turn a little. So you're now taking your head towards one knee. Change direction, so turn towards your other knee. And so your power is just rolling around, drawing your shoulders and your head in a small circle, hardly going out beyond the range of your feet and your hips, maybe not even going out at all. Smoothing your back and your spine. Come back to the center and then pull one heel up, step out, making sure the knee's still bent at the end of the step. Planting the foot. And on the other side. Okay. Your hands down by your sides. Turning your hands palm forwards again. This time combining that rotation with the transfer of your weight. So bird folds its wings. Nice smooth movements. Try not to hold your fingers tight. And then change into fisherman castanet. Your arms just swinging from your shoulders. Trying to maintain that sense of being calm and settled in mind and body as you do this. Some people like to use the image of being in water. So if I was doing this in water, my arms would trail behind my shoulders. My elbows would be quite soft. My fingers would trail behind my wrist and so on and so forth. I'm not trying to do this, but my arm would naturally swing in a little curve. So at the end of that little curve forwards, just hold your arms in position gently, come back. Notice how that brings your arms up, and then you drop your elbows, drop them down again. Same thing again. This is called rolling the ball in towards your chest. This time, as your arms come up, turn them palm in, push your elbows out, feel the expansion in the chest here. And then as you go forwards, drawing your elbows in, so you're squeezing on a ball, and then back out. And just this time, focus between your shoulder blades and feel the expansive movement there as your arms come in. And just allow that expansion to begin to contract to help bring your arms back out. Pigeon spreads its wings. This time, keeping your hands in front of your hips. Elbows still go out a little bit. You still get that opening in the chest, and pushing wave. One more time. Hands loosely fisted now. Pushing forwards, rotating your arm. So the arm rotates from your shoulder. And then as you go forwards, your hands push forward and you rotate so that your hand will be palm down if it were open. Importantly, don't bring your elbow right back here because that throws the alignment with your shoulder out. We'll be doing it with both hands, of course. Open your hands, turn your hands palm out, wind it back in. One more time. Polishing the table, you turn your hands palm down, turn a little bit in one direction, roll forwards, let that movement, draw your arms around, swing it across to the other side, polishing the table. And again, once more. Your hands circle out, around and back, coming back to the starting position. As they arrive there again without rushing, turn your hands palm up. Push down through your feet and your hips and feel that little sense of lengthening through your back and spine. It's important to try and feel the initiating movement, which is this downward press through feet and hips. One more time again. Time at the bottom of the movement, turning your hands out. Still with the expansion and contraction. Wild goose. And then as your hands come down, you angle forward. So now your hands can drop a little in front of your knees. Sit back, push up, elbows once again, leading your fingers, this time in a smooth circle around. And back. The rhythm in the movement is a constant. Not always as regular as this, but in most of the exercises that we do in these sessions, it will be. Still using feet and hips to create a little bit of a sense of pull down. This time, letting your hands drop to your sides. And with the next expansion upwards through your body, pushing your elbow out, fingers traveling along behind, and then pulling down. This is dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Change sides. Okay. So these last four movements are all movements that we would like to try and initiate with a gentle downward press through feet and hips. And much of the variety will come in the upper part of the body. I've often said with this particular movement, I talked about the dragon as found in East Asian culture as being a much more slender figure than the Western version. This, of course, is a great time of year for images like that. We're getting close to the start of the Chinese year of the dragon. There's plenty of dragon symbols around if you want to take a look at what I'm talking about. Now, I'm going to go back to the first of these exercises, the one we call rooting down, doing one of each. Turning your hands out. Heart in the clouds. And dragon likes the stars in the sky. Do one more of these. Now, change it. Push it up. Both hands together. And push out. Just trying to stay aware of the patterns of movement in your upper body. Particularly in your back, I think, with this one. And one thing to consider with this exercise, again, I can't do both arms, is here, you see, my hand is slightly in front of my head. And here, likewise, my hand is slightly in front, not right over there, but not pulled back either. And it is very easy to pull the hand back, and particularly for some reason, a lot of us have the habit of getting to here and then kind of leaning back a bit. We're not trying to do. And that will tighten up your back. And that will block the sense of movement. Go through back and shoulders, tops of your arms, this very smooth, massaging quality of movement. One more round. One foot out. Your knees slightly bent, easing forwards. And scooping the sea and looking at the sky. The length of your back just extending a little bit, not so far as to make it a stretch, but you'll certainly feel the extension, and maybe in the back of your leg as well. So one of the things we want to really develop is this awareness of the patterns of movement that we begin to be associated with different exercises and different parts of the body. And then hands fisted and grasping the tiger's ears. change sides. Scooping the seat and looking at the scoop. So your leg is extended, but don't lock your knee. And change to grasping the tiger's ears. And bring the feet back. So everything is based on maintaining the sort of awareness of feeling and spaciousness and however whatever we associate with this basic posture. So when we do I don't know, this or whatever, we want to make sure we're not struggling, we're not straining. That can be quite challenging with a lot of the movements. So we have to think about how we're moving and trying to just cultivate a constant awareness of this quality of the posture. So it's useful just to sit and to stand in the posture to really cultivate your own your own relationship with it, I suppose you could say. This sense of what it means to you. I like the image of the mountain. It seems to encapsulate much of what's important for me about the posture, but it might mean something different to you. It might be a sort of sensation in your back or whatever, but it's something that becomes very familiar to you. And after a while, really what we're looking to do is in combination with this releasing feeling, because if this posture represents the mountain, then the pathway to the mountain is through that releasing, this quality summed up in the Chinese term sung. This is what brings us to this. It's not a striving for this posture. It's a sense of allowing your body to come into this. And almost like the kind of feeling you get when you, if you put an old pair of shoes on, it's almost as though your feet know the shape. So you come to know what you're looking for, and a sense of your body flowing into that. And this process of there being some kind of idea that translates into an intention, which then is a shape, if you like, or quality that we allow the body to access or to flow into. It's something that we can apply to all of the movements. So let's go into part of the wild horse's mane. Let's look first at the pattern of weight change. Let your weight come down into your right hip predominantly. The weight is everywhere, but we're talking about where we really feel the weight. You go forwards and turn towards the left knee, and then you come back on the same pathway. Having arrived there, you move across and turn into your left hip, and you do the same thing on the other side. So these are quite tricky movements. There's a certain amount of angling of the body. There's a rotation. These are all movements that could lead us to stiffen up. If we move too far, that's also the case. If we lose the line, I'm fine here because my head is above my leg. But out here, now I'm sort of being pulled over a bit. So different aspects of the structure, the posture, are important to help us maintain this quality. The Chinese term for that central posture, central equilibrium. And it's in central equilibrium that we can get that sense of internal movement, the flow of the energy. Once we've established this, come across into your right hip, bring your hands to a ball holding position, and come forwards into part the wild horse's mane. Now, my arm here is again above my leg. It's supported by my leg in that sense. I haven't overextended it. Now my shoulder's pulling. If my arm goes out here, it's much harder to maintain that. We might sometimes go out there a little bit. So there's a kind of grey area that we investigate, but there's definitely sort of a bit too far. We come back, letting the arm be drawn across the body, hold the ball, move over into your left hip, turn a little bit to the left. And the same thing again. You start with the movement of the weight, and that generates the flow that moves your arm. And at the same time, when we're more experienced in the movement, when we have an idea of it, we know the shape, and we may even know the image of the flowing quality of the horse's mane is also something that may build into our intention. Do one more on each side. So then, rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. And your arm. The other side. Onto the upper part of your chest. Then your belly. And finally your legs. Push your heels up to get the blood flowing back into the muscles of your legs. And then circling around, feeling the movement in your hips and back the other way. Okay, and then standing. So we're looking for the same qualities, again, however you think of them, mountain or whatever, in the standing posture as in the seated posture. Structurally quite different, of course. So you haven't got the chair there. So what we're essentially going to sit into is the whole body will sit into the ground, our upper body will sit into to our hips. But of course, it's going to be a bit more difficult. So first of all, as you stand, just try this little exercise of in your hips and lower back, just tightening up very carefully and release it. If you find that you wobble around when you release, that is in itself quite interesting. But for the moment, just hold on to something while you do this. So one thing to notice here is that, again, there's a substantial feeling of dropping. And your hips will drop a little bit, but not nearly as much as it feels like they're dropping. Another thing to think about, very carefully, put your knees back until they feel a bit locked, and then try the same thing again. And it simply doesn't work. It doesn't. You don't get that same feeling of dropping. If we put those two together, then what we realize is that when we come into this posture, we get that feeling of releasing around hips and buttocks. We soften in the knees. The knees will bend a little bit, but I'm deliberately not saying bend your knees. And we get that feeling of dropping. Now, from this position, we let the hips drop back more and the knees bend more. But then we come up. So really the posture that we're looking for is that higher posture with the knees soft, but not ridiculously bent. So what we don't want to do is to associate this quality of rooting down, this quality of the mountain, with how much we bend the knees. We do exercises where we bend the knees more, and that helps to condition the legs, and there's other aspects to that as well. But we could see that what we're doing really is to make this a more comfortable posture. So don't get fanatical about the knees bending. I mean, the knees will bend, but if you've got a bit of arthritis, a bit of pain in your knees or your hips or something like that, you won't want to do that too much. But from this to this, it should be achievable. So you let your hips drop back a little bit more, being careful not to strain in your knees. Bring your hands around and pushing up and pressing down. Let's do a few rounds of these exercises, doing them in a little sequence. So going into the wild goose and dropping, and then passing the clouds. And back to rooting down. Almost inevitably, we lose that sense of releasing, particularly as we push up. But we can start to get it back again on the way down. Let's make this the last one. And shake hands. Now put one foot forwards. Again, as you said, just bring your weight to the middle and try this little exercise of just squeezing and releasing. Squeeze and release around hips, lower back, buttocks. See what the effect is if you lock your knees. It's not nearly so effective in that sense. So again, just allowing yourself to drop a little bit and then beginning to transfer your weight. Once again, almost inevitably in the movement that we make as we make the transition from front to back and back to front, we lose some of that sense of releasing. There'll be all sorts of reasons for that. Some we can overcome, but it just seems to be the norm. So we can get into the habit of returning. And a good place to do that is when your weight is settling in each leg. So the key thing that we're looking for as we arrive in each leg is what's happening in our hips, what's happening in our knees. So when we can have a sense of good structure, we've got our feet in the right place and so on and so forth, and begin to apply this quality of sung or releasing, gradually our body settles into position. And if we practice it enough, then it will physically condition to enhance and cultivate that quality. Becomes more natural. The muscles are more shaped, if you like, developed to allow this to happen. The qualities in the nervous system and so on, all the way through the body, will begin to kind of allow this to happen. And so we have the idea, we have the shape, the sensation, the feeling, the movement. I mean, however we experienced it, we have that as part of our intention, and the body begins to flow into that shape. As you go into the back foot, just raising your toes, going into the front foot, putting your heel up. Each of those movements associated with a further sense of dropping through your hips. And then stepping in. And then on the other side. So when we do release, once again, we notice we don't just collapse. We feel more aware of the natural support for the body, which is our skeleton. And we begin to draw on the strength of that, to cultivate the strength of that. I say the skeleton, I mean skeleton and associated areas, the tissues and so on and so forth. Get a sense of moving much more from that. And so gradually over a period of time, that stronger feeling inside the body sort of spreads out. Raising your toes and your heel. So this inner strength, as it's sometimes referred to, actually starts to become accessible to us through the process of softening and releasing, not through tightening. And I would emphasize, we're not talking about not using the muscles. We're talking about how we use them. And the effort of moving, the effort of supporting the body gets spread through the whole of the body rather than just in one or two areas. And if we apply the image of moving through water, the density that we would imagine moving in, again, encourages the body, encourages that inner strength to come right to the surface. And then stepping in. Think of your body as being like an inflated balloon. If you get an inflated balloon and you start to push your finger in, you'll meet more and more resistance, but it would never be hard. Another example might be, and this is a classic example from the Tai Chi writings, you get a block of wood or a ball, you push it down into water, it gets harder and harder to push down. But it wouldn't be like trying to push it into a lump of rock. There would always be that kind of softness there. And then step through, either forwards or backwards. In the other direction. Good. Have your right foot forwards. Starting in your back foot, go forwards and turn and let your arms swing out. And the wind blows the willows. Ease back, dropping your hands down. As you settle into your back foot, you turn. One more round. And then change over. Same thing on the opposite side. Going into your front foot, turn a little, feel the effect, moving your arms here. Just turn your front foot out a little bit, or if you're going backwards, you've already got the foot turned out. As you go forwards this time, draw the back foot in or the empty foot in, take a step. The same thing here, just Pick the toes down, check your posture here. And then if you're comfortable with this next stage, that's fine. If you're not, but there, just raising the knee, rotating your hip. Dragonfly skims the water, hips dropping back. And then step back. One more time. And bring your feet and shake out. Okay, go back to your chairs. Once again, just sitting, using whatever is useful to you to come back to this quality of central equilibrium. Drop your hands down and then push your arms out, and notice that as your arms extend outwards and upwards, you get to a point where it can start to strain. Really, just before you do that, bring your hands around in a circle so you're holding the balls and draw them in and down. So we come back to this. So we as we push out, as we extend, embracing the tiger, we get to a point where we're right on the edge of that capability of maintaining central equilibrium. And there's just a natural cycle of movement through the body, taken from the pull of gravity, that brings us back to the mountain. Embrace tiger, return to the mountain. One more time. And rest. And open your eyes. We seem to get close to running out of time in these sessions these days. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. As always, if you have any questions, please do email me and ask for them. I'll ask them and try and answer them as best I can.